Part 2, Chapter 15 of If All These Young Men by Romer Wilson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Expatriate in Bangor, Maine. Part 2, London. Chapter 15, Leaves in the Trees. The weather next morning was beautiful, the air was clear and warm, and the sun shone down upon the town, so that it seemed as if London had been transported into a country of spring mornings. Blanchard stood at his window looking down into the courtyard. A gentle wind blew up against his face and along his arms beneath his unfastened shirt sleeves. The wind refreshed his whole body and his whole mind, and he felt well. Presently he moved and continued dressing, but he came back to the window to fasten his waistcoat, and stood still a few moments with his hands in his trouser pockets to enjoy the morning. He had bathed and shaved and brushed his hair and put his glasses on, so that he felt dressed, but automatically he moved in a few minutes and fetched an ivory manicurer off his untidy dressing table, and returning for the third time to the window began to clean his nails. His hands acted independently of his mind. His mind was fixed upon the trees down in the courtyard. There were leaves in the trees. Summer was coming, and soon life would be one long day again instead of one long night. His eyes were glazed with faraway thoughts, and he looked sad. He was not sad. He was quite happy. A child again who had forgotten that in 10 minutes he would have to be a man. A serious child who found in the contemplation of leaves upon the trees a happiness which came from very far away. He was unconscious, mooning upon his unformulated thought, and presently he stopped cleaning his nails and was wrapped off into a spring daydream in which nothing happened. His eyes half closed, his mouth opened a little as if he were in gentle sleep, and then in a moment warmth and happiness suffused his heart, and he moved, put on his coat, grimaced at himself in the glass, and went out of the room. Breakfast was ready. The cups and plates were cool and blue in the early sunshine. The bread and bacon and eggs and marmalade seemed beautiful and too good to eat. Blanchard threw up the window sashes and sat down at the table. Pigeons cooed and birds twittered in the trees below him, and far down he could see the Thames at flood, sparkling in the morning sun. He fixed the Times up against the milk jug, but he found that nothing in the Times could depress him this morning. The events in its black print were only accidents in a continuous rightness. The black print itself upon the white paper was a mere accessory to the beauty of the sunlit breakfast table. He was not an artist. He did not say these things to himself. He did not notice the green shadows in the room, upon the newspaper or the napkins. If he had seen some varnished, quiet interior of an English morning room, with a quiet man sitting at breakfast in it, he would have said, "Yes, yes, that's it, I feel like that." His housekeeper opened the door, and the draught filled the room with a refreshing wind. There were several letters for him, but these he threw on the table, and they became an accessory of the scene. In due time he went downstairs with his hat on his head and his stick upon his arm, and found himself under the trees that he had looked down upon. He looked up at them as he hurried through into the street, and as he sprang into an omnibus that was going east, he caught a glimpse of new green leaves through the archway that he had just come out of. Down on the embankment the trams ran to and fro under the plane trees, and in one of those going west sat Josephine on her way to work. She sat sideways so that she could see the river. At Westminster she got out, ran down the steps to the parapet, and looked over at the floating quay. A boat was drawn up alongside of it, and it made her wish to be on a boat going out to a new country. Upon the high flood boats were ascending the river, and it was impossible to believe they were anything but ships of happiness, or that life upon them was hard and ordinary. She gazed across the river at the new county hall. Once she had seen a little drawing of it upon paper before a stone of it was set, and now it rose half completed, a wonder of huge slabs of concrete, a ruin of incompletion, as one day it would be a ruin of decay. In the center of it, like a mathematical signification, hung a huge crane. It will never look so well, she thought, as it does now, as a base for that huge crane. The crane and itself were in proportion. She sighed. Presently she turned, sprang up the steps, and ran through the gloomy brick archway of Scotland Yard out into Whitehall. Here she sprang on an omnibus that was moving quickly, and went in it towards Westminster. As the omnibus swung through Parliament Square, she saw that all the trees were twitching with new leaves, fairest green against the dark old Abbey. She wished to get off and walk about, but she was late already for her work, and in a few seconds the omnibus was in gloomy Victoria Street. In the office the sun was bright and warm, and her dirty room had for once lost the odor of tobacco and soot. Upon her desk somebody had put a jam jar full of cowslips, and among them were a few sycamore leaves. Everything is in leaf, she thought. She took one of the leaves in her hand and looked at the light through it, and there came back to her days in Derbyshire where at other times she lived. Our sets of lives are queer and different, she thought, and each seems unreal when we are not in it. Oh God, I am glad it is summer again. A man came into the room and she said, "Hello, good morning. See, I have got some cowslips and the leaves are out." The man laughed and in a Cockney accent said, "It's a beautiful day. It makes you want to be down in the country drinking milk." End of part 2, chapter 15, recording by Expatriate in Bangor, Maine.